Aurelia's spire did not spin so much as it pirouetted through the void, a diamond needle threading the darkness above the galactic plane. It was a masterpiece of orbital engineering and a monument to paranoia. Within its hull of transparasteel and woven duranium, the air smelled of ozone, expensive perfume, and the distinct metallic tang of anxiety. Here, in the grandest diplomatic megastation of the Sector 7 expanse, power was not measured in fleet strength or credit reserves. It was measured in etiquette, in silence, and in the precise calculus of who was allowed to be seen standing next to whom. Lyris Voyle stood alone. This was not an accident. It was a carefully orchestrated maneuver by the master of ceremonies. A slight so subtle that to acknowledge it would be a breach of decorum, yet so obvious that everyone in the grand atrium had noticed it within moments of arriving. Lyris stood near the viewing wall, where the curvature of the station revealed the burning violet nebula beyond. She held a flute of sparkling hydra nectar that she had no intention of drinking. She was stunning. It was an objective fact that seemed to irritate the court more than if she had been hideous. Her skin possessed a faint, opalescent shimmer, a hallmark of the Voyle lineage, and her eyes were the color of a supernova's core, bright and arresting. But beneath the heavy silk of her ceremonial gown, her genetic code harbored a deviation. The Empire called it a biovariant. The traditionalists called it a corruption. The scientists called it a throwback to an age before the Great Silence, a mutation that allowed for heightened neural connectivity that the current regime found deeply unsettling. Because of this, Lyris was a genetic liability. She was fit for display, but unfit for the marriage market. She was a minor royal from a star-born house that had once commanded armadas but now only commanded pity. A passing dignitary from House Core, a man with a face like chiseled granite and eyes like cold flints, drifted past her. He offered a nod that was millimeters shallow, a gesture that technically fulfilled the requirement of acknowledging a royal but spiritually dismissed her existence. Lyris returned the nod with a practiced perfection that masked the fatigue in her bones. She was 28 standard years old, and she had spent 20 of them being smiled at in public and discarded in private. She was the decorative centerpiece of a dying dynasty. The whispers around the room were louder than usual tonight. The Empress was ill. The news had not been officially released, but on Aurelia's spire, truth traveled faster than light. The Empress's biostasis chamber was failing, and the succession was a jagged question mark. The reformist faction, a loose coalition of younger nobles and outlying systems, was desperate for a symbol. The traditionalists, led by the ruthlessly efficient House Core, were tightening their grip, preparing to strangle any deviation from the old ways. And Lyris was just furniture. Beautiful, dangerous furniture that no one wanted to sit on. The grand doors at the far end of the atrium groaned open, the sound resonating through the vaulted ceiling. The chatter died instantly. The master of protocol, a cybernetically enhanced functionary with a voice like grinding glass, announced the new arrivals, the delegation from Terra, the humans. Lyris watched with mild curiosity. Humans were a recent addition to the galactic stage, considered by the high families to be brash, tragically short-lived, and suspiciously adaptable. They had sent an envoy to negotiate a peace corridor through the disputed Veil systems. Adrian Veil walked in. He did not glide like the Veil nobility, nor did he march like the core militarists. He moved with a predatory economy, a man who clearly knew exactly how much space he occupied and saw no reason to apologize for it. He wore the dress uniform of the Terran Coalition, a stark charcoal gray with silver piping that looked almost austere compared to the peacocking robes of the imperial court. He was not conventionally beautiful by imperial standards.
No.
His features were too sharp, his jaw too aggressive, but there was an intelligence in his eyes that made Lyris pause. He stopped at the top of the stairs. His gaze swept the room, dissecting the power dynamics in a single heartbeat. He saw the clusters of admirals, the circles of gossiping consorts, and the terrifyingly polite distance everyone kept from everyone else. And then he saw her. Lyris felt the weight of his attention like a physical touch. Most men looked at her and saw the scandal of her genetics or the tragedy of her house. Adrian Vale looked at her and seemed to see a calculus he had not finished solving. He descended the stairs, his boots clicking rhythmically against the obsidian floor. The entire court held its breath. Protocol dictated that the human envoy should proceed directly to the head table to pay respects to the regent. His assigned seat was there, nestled between a minor trade minister and a potted fern, a subtle insult designed to remind the humans of their place. Adrian walked past the regent. He walked past the admirals. He walked past the trade minister and the fern. He walked straight to the small, isolated table near the viewing wall where Lyris had been sequestered. The silence in the room stretched thin, threatening to snap. This was not just a breach of protocol, it was an act of diplomatic vandalism. Lyris stiffened, her fingers tightening around the stem of her glass. She prepared herself for a mockery, for a proposition, for some clumsy attempt at exoticism. She braced her internal walls, ready to retreat into the numbness that had protected her for years. Adrian stopped before her table. He did not ask for permission. He pulled out the empty chair beside her, the legs scraping loudly against the floor, a jagged noise that made several duchesses wince. He sat down. He turned his chair not toward the room, but toward her, creating a private sphere in the middle of the most public space in the galaxy. She thought she was unwanted, until a human sat beside her like she was a queen. The thought struck her with the force of a weapon. It was not just the action, it was the manner of it. There was no hesitation in him, no furtive glance at the regent to see if he would be punished. He simply claimed the space as if it were the only logical place in the room to be. "Hi, Lady Vale," Adrian said. His voice was a deep baritone, grounding and calm amidst the sudden storm of whispers. "It is an honor to finally meet the mind behind the theorems on slipspace ethics. I read your paper during the jump from Earth." Lyris blinked. The paper he referenced had been published under a pseudonym in an obscure academic journal 5 years ago. It was a theoretical critique of hyperlane colonization, dismissed by the Imperial Science Council as sentimental drivel. "You know who I am," she said, her voice steady despite the rapid beating of her heart. "I make it my business to know the intelligent people in the room," Adrian replied. "It saves me time." A drone camera hovered near them, its red eye blinking rapidly as it beamed the image to every screen on the station and arguably half the sector. The headline wrote itself, "The Human and the Defective." Lyris leaned forward slightly, lowering her voice. "Envoy Vale, you are causing a scene. By sitting here, you are insulting the regent, the trade minister, and likely the entire House of Kor. You are committing political suicide before your negotiations have even begun." Adrian smiled, and the expression transformed his face. It was not a diplomat's smile, practiced and hollow. It was genuine, amused, and dangerously charming. "I have found that sticking to the assigned seating rarely leads to interesting conversation," he said. "Besides, on Earth, we have a saying. It is better to be at the table with the smartest person than at the head of the table with the loudest." He leaned back, signaling a waiter with a casual flick of his hand. The room was buzzing now. The shock had worn off, replaced by a feverish viral energy. Feeds were lighting up. The human had chosen the outcast. Was it a strategy? Was it ignorance? Or was it an insult to the Empire's standards of genetic purity? Adrian looked at her, his expression turning serious. I greet you as a sovereign of your own spirit. Lyris Vael, he said, using the high Valyrian phrasing reserved for heads of state. May your stars never dim in the shadow of lesser suns. The phrasing was archaic, formal, and breathtakingly respectful. But he had made a slight error in the tonal inflection on the last word. Instead of saying lesser suns, he had accidentally used the phonetically similar word for burning garbage. Lyris stared at him for a second, the absurdity of the moment warring with the intensity of his respect. A laugh, unbidden and sharp, bubbled up in her throat. She suppressed it, but a smile broke through her defenses, a real smile, one that reached her eyes and made the bioluminescence in her skin flare softly. Envoy, she said, her tone dry but warm. While I appreciate the sentiment, you just wished that my stars never dim in the shadow of burning refuse. Adrian paused. He replayed the words in his head, and then a look of mortification crossed his face, quickly replaced by a self-deprecating grin. Ah, he said, my linguistic tutor warned me about the tonal shifts. I suppose burning refuse is a poetic description for some of the politicians in this room. Though, shall we pretend I meant it metaphorically? It was a pivot of such effortless charisma that Lyris felt the tension in her chest uncoil. He had made a fool of himself, but he had invited her to share in the joke rather than shutting her out. Make no mistake, Lyris, he said, dropping the titles. I sat here because I wanted to. For the next hour, the gala ceased to exist. They spoke of warp mechanics, of Earth's chaotic oceans, of the suffocating beauty of Aurelia Spire. Lyris found herself speaking with a sharpness she usually suppressed. She critiqued his government's trade proposals. He countered with observations about the Empire's stagnation that were so acute they bordered on espionage. She forgot, for a moment, that she was the unwanted Vael daughter. She felt seen. But the galaxy does not tolerate disruptions for long. As the gala wound down, a slender figure in the emerald robes of the reformist faction brushed past their table. It was distinct, deliberate contact. A data chip was slipped under Lyris's napkin. The whispers are louder than you think, the reformist murmured without stopping. Your image tonight, it is powerful. Use it. Lyris did not touch the chip. She looked across the room and locked eyes with Lord Kor. He was not looking at Adrian. He was looking at her, and his expression was one of cold, reptilian calculation. He tapped his comms link, speaking a few silent words, then turned away. I should go, Lyris said, the cold reality of her position crashing back in. You have made a statement, Envoy, but I am the one who will pay the punctuation costs. Adrian stood as she rose. I do not leave my allies behind. Lyris, we are not allies, she said, though the words felt like a lie. We are a scandal. She swept out of the hall, her heart racing, back in her quarters. The silence of the suite felt oppressive. The high windows looked out over the starlit curve of the station's arms. Lyris stripped off her gloves, revealing the silver markings that traced the veins of her hands, the physical manifestation of her variant. She stared at them, hating them, loving them. Her datapad chimed. It was a priority alert from the public feeds. The video was playing on a loop. It was footage from the gala, but it had been subtly altered. The angle was shifted, the lighting tweaked. In this version, Lyris was not laughing at Adrian's mistake. She was leaning in close, her eyes glowing with an unnatural intensity. her hand brushing his arm in a way that suggested hypnotic suggestion. The headline screamed, "Biovariant manipulation?" Human envoy ensnated by Veil Siren, House Core worked fast. They were painting her not as a victim or a reformist symbol, but as a predator using her genetic mutation to mind control the naive human diplomat. It was absurd, but to a populace raised to fear biovariants, it was terrifyingly plausible. Lyris threw the data pad onto the couch. She went to the hydration dispenser, her hands shaking. When she returned to the living area, the lights in her quarters flickered. The environmental systems hummed down to a low, ominous frequency. On the wall screen, the logo of the station authority vanished, replaced by a single line of text in jagged red script. "Leave the summit by dawn, or be the first body in the airlock." It was not a request. It was an encrypted threat, bypassed directly through the station's firewalls. Only someone with Security Council clearance could have sent it. The door chime rang. Lyris froze. She reached for the small ceremonial dagger she kept on her desk. A letter opener. Really, but sharp enough. "Who is it?" she called out. "Adrian," came the muffled reply. "And I know about the threat. Open the door." "Lyris." She hesitated, then keyed the lock. The door slid open. Adrian was out of his dress uniform, wearing a tactical bodysuit that looked far more comfortable and far more dangerous. He held a device in his hand that was scanning the hallway. "May I come in?" he asked. "You are persistent," Lyris said, stepping aside. "I am worried," he corrected. He stepped inside and the door sealed shut. "I saw the broadcast. House Core is terrified of you. They are terrified of what I represent," she said bitterly. "A defect that refuses to die." "No," Adrian said, stepping closer. He looked at the red text still burning on her wall screen. "They are terrified because for the first time in a century, someone looked at a vial and saw a leader, not a liability. And they know that if I saw it, others will too." Lyris crossed her arms. "So you are here to what? Save me?" "I did not ask for a knight." "Adrian, I am not a knight," Adrian said. "I am a tactical analyst, and my analysis says you are the key to this entire summit. If you die, the reformists scatter. Core seizes power, and my peace treaty burns. I am protecting my interests." "Is that all?" Lyris asked, her voice dropping. Adrian looked at her. The distance between them was less than a meter. She could smell the faint scent of rain and ozone on him. "No," he said softly. "That is not all. You deserve to be safe, Lyris. Not because you are useful, but because you are you." The admission hung in the air, heavy and electric. Lyris felt a flush of heat that had nothing to do with her biovariant. She was wary, terrified of being used, yet breathless at the idea that someone would stand between her and the dark. "We cannot stay here," Adrian said, breaking the moment. That threat on the screen was a timer, not a warning. "They will not wait until dawn." He moved to the window. "We need to move. I have a secure transport waiting in the lower diplomatic hangar." Lyris grabbed a cloak, shrouding her glowing skin. "I know a service route. Through the Hall of Reflections. It cuts through the maintenance sectors." "Lead the way," Adrian said. They moved quickly, exiting her quarters and slipping into the service corridors. The station was sleeping, the lights dimmed to a low amber pulse. They reached the Hall of Reflections, a purely aesthetic indulgence by the station's architects. It was a long, narrow corridor lined entirely with mirrors made of crystallized void glass, designed to reflect the starlight from outside into an infinite regression of glittering darkness. It was beautiful, and it was a kill box. They were halfway down the corridor when the lights cut out completely. Down! Adrian roared. He tackled Lyris, slamming her to the polished floor just as the air above them hissed. A coherent energy beam sliced through the space where her head had been a fraction of a second ago. The beam hit the mirrors, shattering them into 1,000 razor-sharp shards that rained down like diamond hail. Adrian rolled, pulling a compact energy pistol from his belt. He fired blindly into the darkness behind them. 2 figures materialized from the shadows, wearing the stealth suits of the Imperial Quiet Units. Their faces were smooth, featureless masks. Lyris scrambled to her feet, the glass crunching under her boots. One of the assassins lunged for her, a vibro blade humming with lethal intent. Adrian was engaging the second shooter, trading fire in a chaotic dance of light and noise. He could not reach her. Lyris did not scream. She did not freeze. The fear that had defined her life evaporated, replaced by a cold, crystalline clarity. The bio-variant in her blood spiked, her perception slowing the world down to a manageable crawl. She saw the assassin's weight shift. She saw the trajectory of the blade. She had spent years invisible, but invisibility was a teacher. She had watched the royal guards train when they thought no one was looking. She had practiced the forms in the privacy of her room, a desperate way to feel control over her own body. As the assassin struck, Lyris did not retreat. She stepped inside his guard. She grabbed his wrist with her left hand, her grip shocking him with its strength, and drove the palm of her right hand into the base of his neck, directly over the neural cluster. It was a precise, vicious strike. The assassin gagged, his nervous system overloading. He collapsed, the blade clattering to the floor. Lyris scooped up the weapon. Adrian fired a final shot, dropping the second attacker. He spun around, weapon raised, ready to defend her, and stopped. Lyris stood amidst the shattered mirrors, her gown torn, her skin glowing with a fierce, blinding luminescence. She held the vibro blade with perfect form, her chest heaving, her eyes burning with a fire that terrified and captivated him. She looked at the fallen assassin, then up at Adrian. "I told you," she said, her voice trembling with adrenaline but devoid of fear. "I am not a damsel." Adrian stared at her, the reflection of 1,000 stars fracturing around them. He lowered his gun. "No," he said, a look of profound respect dawning on his face. "You certainly are not." He moved to her side, checking the corridor. "More will come. We have to go. Now." Lyris nodded. She dropped the blade, but she kept the feeling of its weight in her hand. She had spent her life thinking she was unwanted, a defect to be hidden away. But as they ran together toward the hangar, the shards of the broken mirrors crunching beneath their feet, she realized something had changed. The Queen had woken up, and she was done being silent. Under the bylaws of the Interstellar Concord, a diplomatic assassination attempt triggered an immediate lockdown protocol known as the glass cage. It was designed to ensure safety. But as Lyris Vale paced the perimeter of the containment suite on level 80, it felt remarkably like being put back in the display case. The suite was opulent, decorated in the sterile beige luxury that bureaucrats mistook for comfort. The walls were reinforced blast glass, offering a panoramic view of the station's traffic lanes, a ceaseless river of ion trails and blinking navigation lights. Lyris stopped pacing and looked at Adrian Vale. The human envoy was sitting at a holographic terminal, his jacket discarded, sleeves rolled up to reveal forearms corded with muscle and marked by faint, jagged scars. He was working with a focus that was almost terrifying, his fingers flying across the hard light interface. "We are trapped," Lyris said, her voice cutting through the hum of the air recyclers. "We are secure, Adrian corrected without looking up. There is a difference, is there? Lyris countered, crossing her arms. In my experience, security is just a polite word for control. The Concord has locked us in here while House Core scrubs the crime scene and rewrites the narrative. By morning, that assassin will be identified as a rogue radical, and I will be shipped back to my family estate for stress recovery. Adrian paused. He rotated the chair to face her. His eyes were tired, but the intensity in them had not dimmed. They can try, he said, but I have locked down the sensor logs from the corridor. I sent a copy to my ship and another to a dead drop server in the lower ring. If they try to erase what happened, they will find it very difficult. Lyris felt a flicker of surprise. You thought of that while we were running? I thought of that before I sat down at your table, Adrian said. Paranoia is a job requirement in my line of work. He stood up and walked over to the fabricator unit, ordering 2 cups of synthetic calf. He handed one to her. Lyris took it, her fingers brushing his. The contact sent a jolt through her that she resented. She was not a schoolgirl to be flustered by a touch, yet her body seemed to have forgotten its training. Why are you doing this? She asked, her tone sharpening into sarcasm to hide her unease. Is this part of the human seduction manual? Rescue the damsel, lock her in a tower, and wait for gratitude. Adrian took a sip of his drink, watching her over the rim of the cup. If I wanted gratitude, I would have bought you a puppy, he said dryly. And if I wanted to seduce you, I would not be doing it in a room that smells like industrial sanitizer and anxiety. Lyris almost smiled. Almost. I am serious, Adrian said, his voice dropping an octave. You handled yourself in that corridor. Lyris, that strike you used on the assassin, that was not standard Imperial self-defense. That was vile kinetic arts. I thought that style was extinct. It is, Lyris said, looking away. My grandmother taught me the forms before she died. She said they were a meditation. I never thought I would use them to crush a man's trachea. You saved my life, Adrian said. You saved mine first. She replied. Then we are even, he said. Which means we can stop keeping score and start figuring out why someone on the Security Council wants us dead. Lyris froze. The Security Council? Adrian tapped the terminal. I traced the clearance code that unlocked the service corridor for the assassins. It was not a hack. It was an authorization key belonging to the inner circle of the station's security directorate. This was not a rogue act. It was an eviction notice. The gravity of his words settled on her shoulders. If the call came from inside the house, nowhere on Aurelia Spire was safe. We need proof, Lyris said, her mind racing. Not just logs, but motive. Adrian nodded. I found a reference in the assassin's encrypted comms. They were directed to secure a package from the Vile archives before eliminating the target. Lyris frowned. The Vale archives? That wing has been sealed for 50 years. Since the Great Culling, there is nothing there but dust and genealogy records. Apparently, Adrian said, grimly holstering his weapon. Someone thinks there is something worth killing for. Getting out of the glass cage was easier than it should have been, largely because Adrian knew 3 separate ways to bypass a Concord locking mechanism using only a heated spoon and a power coupling. They moved through the ventilation shafts, descending 20 levels into the station's substructure where the air grew stale and the lights flickered with the rhythm of a failing heart. The entrance to the Vale archives was a massive set of double doors made of black ironwood, a relic from a time when wood was more valuable than gold. A holographic interface hovered before it, glowing a hostile red. Allow me, Lyris said. She stepped forward. She did not reach for the keypad. Instead, she lowered the cowl of her cloak and spoke in High Valyrian, her voice resonating with a harmonic frequency that vibrated in the floor. I am Lyris of House Vale, daughter of the Violet Sun, keeper of the Third Oath. Open. The sensors swept over her. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then, the red light turned a soft, welcoming blue. The heavy doors groaned, the magnetic seals disengaging with a hiss of pressurized air. Show off, Adrian muttered, though he sounded impressed. Standard biometrics, Lyris quipped as they slipped inside. You just have to know the password. The archives were a cathedral of silence. Rows of data towers stretched up into the darkness, their indicator lights blinking slowly. The air was cool and smelled of old paper and ozone. Suddenly, a hologram materialized directly in front of them. It was a floating geometric shape, a dodecahedron of shifting light that pulsed with a manic energy. Greetings, interlopers. The hologram boomed in a voice that sounded like a game show host. You are currently trespassing in a Class 1 heritage zone. The penalty is immediate vaporization followed by a stern letter to your next of kin. How may I assist you today? Lyris blinked. Identify yourself. I am Archivist Unit 7-4, but my friends call me Sparky, the AI replied, spinning happily. Or they would, if I had friends, or if I had not been locked in this basement for 5 decades. Do you have any idea how boring it is to catalog dust mites? I have named them all. The one on your left boot is named Frederick. Adrian stepped forward. Sparky, we are looking for information regarding a recent query into the Vale genetic database. Oh, the gloomy men in the stealth suits? Sparky said, its color shifting to a conspiratorial purple. Dreadful conversationalists. They came in here yesterday, bypassed my firewall with a very rude override chip, and downloaded a single file. Which file? Lyris asked. File Omega 9, Sparky said. The origins of the biovariant. Lyris felt a cold knot tighten in her stomach. That is my medical file. Sparky spun again. Incorrect. That is the misconception. The file is not medical. It is historical. It details the genetic modifications made to the Viel bloodline 3,000 years ago. The glow? The neural density? It is not a defect. Darling, it is an interface key. Interface for what? Adrian asked. Sparky expanded, projecting a star map into the air. The Vale were not just rulers. They were guardians. Your biology was engineered to interface with the Sentinel network, a defensive grid of phase weapon platforms dormant since the Unification Wars. The Empire convinced everyone it was a mutation to keep you from realizing you are literally the keys to the most powerful arsenal in the galaxy. Lyris stared at the map. The realization washed over her, rewriting her entire history. She had been told she was broken. She had been told she was a mistake. I am not a liability, she whispered. I am a weapon. Adrian looked at her, his expression hard. And House Core knows it. That is why they want you dead. They cannot control the grid without a vial. But if they cannot control you, they cannot risk you existing. Or, Lyris said, her voice trembling, they found a way to extract the genetic key without the person attached to it. Sparky bobbed in the air. Bingo! 10 points to the lady with the glowing skin. They downloaded the extraction protocols. Nasty business. Involves a centrifuge and very little anesthesia. We need to leave, Adrian said, grabbing Lyris's arm. Now. Before they could move, the doors behind them slammed shut. The lights in the archive turned a violent, flashing crimson. Security breach detected, Sparky said cheerfully. Oh dear. It seems the rude men have returned, and they have brought friends. I am afraid I must initiate the intruder containment protocol. Nothing personal. Gas began to hiss from the vents. "Sparky," Adrian yelled. "Is there a back door?" "Technically, no," the AI said, "but there is a waste disposal chute that empties into the zero-G transit tubes. It is highly unsanitary and statistically likely to result in injury." "Open it," Lyris commanded. A panel in the floor slid open, revealing a dark, terrifying slide. "Tuck your elbows," Adrian shouted. He pulled her down with him. They plummeted into the dark, sliding through a slick metal gullet that twisted and turned. Lyris barely had time to scream before they were spat out into the vast, open cylinder of the zero-G transit artery.
Can I drop faster than this?
Gravity vanished instantly. Lyris floated, her stomach lurching. The transit tube was a kilometer-wide tunnel running the length of the spire, filled with cargo containers and maintenance drones floating in the weightless void. Adrian grabbed her hand, anchoring her as they drifted. "Magnetic boots," he barked. "Tss." Lyris tapped the heels of her boots together, activating the mag locks. They slammed onto the side of a passing cargo container labeled organic fertilizer. "Well," Adrian said, checking his scanner. That was dignified. Lyris looked at him, her hair floating in a halo around her head. "We are alive. I will take alive over dignified." A laser blast scorched the metal container inches from Adrian's head. Lyris looked up. 3 security drones were pursuing them, thrusters flaring blue against the darkness. "They are gaining!" she shouted. Adrian pulled her along the surface of the container. "We need to jump to that transit shuttle." He pointed to a robotic tram moving parallel to them, about 50 meters away.
Just so you guys know.
"On my mark," Adrian yelled over the roar of the drones. 3, 2, 1, mark!
Anything crazy.
They kicked off the container, soaring through the vacuum. For 10 seconds, they were flying, suspended in the silent chaos of the station's heart. Lyris felt a rush of adrenaline so potent it felt like intoxication.
Where is
She was not the decorative girl in the corner. She was flying through the air, hunted by drones, hand in hand with a human who looked at her like she was the only star in the sky. They crashed onto the roof of the tram,
Look at this.
the impact jarring their bones. Adrian grabbed a maintenance rung, catching Lyris with his other arm before she could bounce off into the void. He pulled her close, their bodies colliding. For a moment, they lay there, pinned against the metal roof by the tram's acceleration, chest to chest. Lyris could feel his heart hammering against hers. She looked up at him, her eyes wide. "Are you okay?" he asked, his voice rough. Lyris nodded, unable to speak. The danger was real, but the proximity was more dangerous. "We need to get off the main line," Adrian said, breaking the gaze. He pried open a maintenance hatch and dropped them into the empty cargo hold of the tram. Safe for the moment, the adrenaline began to crash, leaving Lyris shaking. She sat on a crate, wrapping her arms around herself. Adrian watched her, then sat on the floor opposite her. "I never knew," Lyris said quietly. "All my life, I thought I was wrong. My parents looked at me with such disappointment. They tried to fix me. Treatments, therapies, and all along, I was exactly what I was supposed to be. You were never wrong." "Lyris," Adrian said fiercely. "The Empire is wrong. They built a world where difference is a crime because they are terrified of what they cannot control." Lyris looked at him. "I spent 20 years feeling like a beautifully wrapped rejection, a gift no one wanted to open." Adrian moved then. He crossed the small space between them and knelt before her. He did not touch her, but his presence was a shield. "Then they were fools," he said. His voice was low, vibrating with an intensity that made the air feel thin. "You are not a rejection, Lyris. You are a revelation, and if I have to burn this station down to make them see that, I will." Lyris looked at his hands, resting on his knees. She wanted to reach out. She wanted to bridge the gap. Adrian. She started. His comm unit beeped, shattering the moment. Adrian cursed softly and checked the device. His face went pale. "What is it?" Lyris asked. "The news feeds," he said. He projected the image. It was a broadcast from the Concord Council. A warrant for the arrest of Adrian Vale. The charge was sabotage. They were claiming he had planted a bomb on the peace delegation's shuttle. "They are framing me," Adrian said, his voice cold. "If I am a terrorist, the peace talks are void. The Empire can legally declare war on the Terran coalition to secure the sector. It is the justification for the coup," Lyris realized. "They create a war to rally the systems, install a puppet regent, and use the Veil weapons to crush any dissent. We have to stop them," she said. "We have to get to the weapons first," Adrian corrected. He pulled a data pad from his pocket, the one he had snagged from the archives before the gas hit. "I managed to pull one more thing from Sparky's database before we left," he said. "A shipping manifest. Housecore has been moving cargo to a remote moon in the Vale sector. The manifest is flagged as agricultural equipment, but the energy signatures match Class A phase cannons. They are stockpiling," Lyris said. "We need a ship," Adrian said. "My shuttle is impounded. The commercial docks are locked down." Lyris smiled, a sharp, dangerous expression that felt new on her face. "I know where to get a ship," she said, "but we have to steal it from the Imperial Courier Service." The theft of the Stardust Runner, a sleek, heavily modified courier vessel, involved a great deal of running, a brief argument with a confused docking master, and Lyris overriding the ignition sequence with her biosignature. They blasted out of the hangar bay just as the station's defense turrets began to track them. The ship shuddered as plasma bolts impacted the rear shields. But the courier engines were designed for speed, not combat. Within seconds, they had punched through the traffic layer and were accelerating toward the jump point. Adrian engaged the autopilot and slumped back in the co-pilot seat. "We are clear," he said. Exhaling a breath he seemed to have been holding for an hour. Lyris did not relax. She stared at the stars streaking past the viewport. "We are fugitives," she said. "We are patriots," Adrian said. "Depending on who writes the history books." He stood up. "The ship is small. There is a sleeping berth in the back. You should rest. It will be 6 hours to the jump gate." Lyris nodded. She stood and walked to the small living quarters at the rear of the cabin. It was intimate, designed for a single pilot. A narrow bunk, a small table, the hum of the engine vibrating through the floor. Adrian followed her to the doorway but did not enter. "Lyris," he said. She turned. The tension that had been building between them since the gala, since the mirror corridor, since the cargo tram, suddenly filled the room. It was thick and heavy, a physical weight. Adrian stepped inside. The door slid shut behind him. The air in the room felt charged. They were two people stripped of their titles, their protections, and their futures. All they had was the moment and the terrifying pull of gravity between them. Adrian reached out, his hand cupping her cheek. His thumb brushed the glowing skin beneath her eye. "You are glowing," he whispered. "I cannot help it," she said, her voice breathless. "It happens when I feel intense emotion." "What are you feeling?" he asked. "Fear," she admitted. "Anger. Is that all?" Lyris looked into his eyes. "No." She leaned into his touch. The kiss, when it came, was not tentative. It was a collision of desperate need. It was the release of a lifetime of holding back, of being perfect and silent and cold. Adrian kissed her with a hunger that shook her, his hands tangling in her hair, pulling her closer as if he could merge their atoms. Lyris responded with equal force, her hands gripping his shirt, pulling him down. It was messy and raw and deeply, achingly human.
Dang, you can drift.
They stumbled back toward the bunk. Adrian's hands were on her waist, his touch possessing but reverent. "Wait," Lyris gasped, pulling back slightly. Adrian stopped instantly. He did not pull away, but his hands stilled. He waited, his breathing ragged. Lyris looked at him. Her heart was hammering against her ribs like a trapped bird. She wanted this. She wanted him. But the old fear, the voice that said she was only valuable for what she could give, whispered in her ear. "I cannot be another conquest. Adrian," she said, her voice shaking. "I have been used for my name, for my face,
Did not mean to do that.
and now for my genetics.
What the
I
fuck
need
was
to know.
open this
I need to know that this is not just adrenaline.
gun?
I need to know that you are not just securing an asset." Adrian stepped back, giving her space. He ran a hand through his hair, his eyes never leaving hers. "Lyris, look at me." She looked. "I have negotiated treaties with warlords. I have stared down dreadnoughts. I have never been as terrified as I am right now. Not because of the danger, but because you are the most formidable person I have ever met, and the thought of hurting you makes me sick." He took a slow breath. "I am not securing an asset. I am falling in love with you. And if that frightens you,
Same gun.
or if you are not ready, then nothing happens. I will take the floor. I will fly the ship. I will do whatever you need. Because you are the queen, Lyris. And I am just the man lucky enough to sit beside you." Lyris felt tears prick her eyes. It was the first time in her life a man had stopped. The first time a man had valued her no more than her yes. She took a step forward. "I do not want you to take the floor," she said softly. Adrian waited, letting her close the distance. "I want you to stay," she said. "But slowly.
This is crazy.
I need to choose this. Every step." Adrian nodded, a look of profound tenderness softening his sharp features.
Or
"Every step,"
fast.
he promised. He reached out and took her hand, kissing the knuckles where the silver veins of her bio-variant shone brightest. They slept tangled together, fully clothed. Adrian's arm draped over her like a protective band of iron. It was the most peaceful sleep Lyris had ever known. She woke to the proximity alarm. Adrian was already awake, moving to the cockpit. "What is it?" Lyris asked, rubbing the sleep from her eyes. "We are coming up on the Vale sector," Adrian said, "and we have company." Lyris joined him in the cockpit. On the sensors, a cluster of red dots was closing in. "Imperial Patrol?" she asked. "No," Adrian said. "The transponder codes are scrambled. These are mercenaries. Core must have put a bounty on our heads. They can track the courier engine. They can track the thermal wake," Adrian said. He punched coordinates into the nav computer. "We can't outrun them in open space. Then where are we going?"
Oh, I know.
"The Forbidden Zone," Adrian said. "The coordinates from the relic map. That is inside the nebula," Lyris said. "The ionization will strip our shields. It will strip theirs too," Adrian said, grinning that reckless, charming grin. "And I am a better pilot than they are." He pushed the throttle forward. The Stardust Runner surged, diving into the swirling violet clouds of the nebula. Behind them, the mercenary ships opened fire. Lyris strapped herself in. She looked at Adrian, his hands steady on the controls, and then down at her own hands, glowing with a soft, steady light. She was not unwanted. She was chosen. And for the first time, she was doing the choosing. "Let's fly," she said. The Stardust Runner was a good ship, but she was not built for the rough edges of the galaxy. She was built for courier runs between high-orbit banking spires, not for weaving through the graveyard of the Veil systems. Here, the stars did not twinkle. They were obscured by thick drifts of nebular dust and the drifting wreckage of a dozen border skirmishes.
Or is that a real
Lyris Vale sat in the co-pilot seat,
I don't want to send
looking
you
out at the
that.
endless parade of misery that the Imperial broadcasts never showed.
I learned
They
this
passed
from-
convoy after convoy of refugee ships, hulking, rusted freighters welded together from scrap,
That's just
towing habitats that leaked atmosphere and hope in equal measure. These were the people displaced by the House Wars. The collateral damage of the games played in the glittering ballrooms of Aurelia Spire. They look like ghosts, Lyris whispered, her hand pressed against the cool transparasteel of the viewport. They are the Unwanted,
Hello?
Adrian said.
Can you give me some stuff?
He was
please?
piloting manually, his eyes scanning the sensor readout for the energy signatures of the Imperial quiet units that were hunting them.
Oh, shit.
This is where the decisions made at your dinner parties actually land.
Should I use my jet?
Lyris. Lyris felt a flush of shame that burned hotter than her biovariant markings. She had spent her life feeling sorry for herself, isolated in her tower, mourning her inability to marry well. She had never considered that her silence was a currency spent to purchase this suffering. I did not know, she said. It sounded like a pathetic excuse. That is the point of the spire, Adrian replied, his voice devoid of judgment but heavy with truth, to keep the view pretty. He adjusted the thrusters, banking the ship around a cloud of magnetic debris. They had been running for 3 days. The initial adrenaline of the escape had faded, replaced by a grim, exhausting vigilance. They took turns sleeping in 4-hour shifts. The intimacy of the small ship was absolute. There were no servants, no protocols, no walls, just the hum of the engine, the smell of recycled air,
Wait, is this where
and the undeniable gravitational pull between them. During a quiet stretch, while the autopilot navigated a relatively clear sector, Adrian spun his chair around. He looked at Lyris, who was trying to clean the soot from her ceremonial gown with a damp cloth. She looked ridiculous and majestic all at once. I have a confession, Adrian said.
Oh, there's one person.
Lyris looked
Oh my
up,
God, I'm scared.
wary. If you are going to tell me you do not actually know how to land this ship, please save it for after we are on the ground. Adrian smiled, a tired, lopsided expression. No. I want to tell you why I am here, why I sat at your table. Lyris paused. You said you wanted to meet the author of the slipspace theorem. That was true, Adrian said, but it was not the whole truth. I did not get assigned to the Aurelia Summit by random rotation. I volunteered.
I don't get
I
it.
fought for the assignment. Why? Lyris asked. The human coalition considers the vial dangerously unstable. Because of the winter solstice of 2810, Adrian said. Lyris stiffened. The memory hit her like a physical blow. The winter solstice,
Oh shit.
the year she had been presented to the court and publicly rejected by the heir of House Kor. He had mocked her mutation in front of 3,000 dignitaries, calling her a bioluminescent mistake. She had stood there for 20 minutes while the court laughed, tears streaming down her face, refusing to run.
God, oh my God.
You saw that, she
Oh
whispered.
my God.
I was a junior attaché. Watching the feed from Earth, Adrian said, I watched a room full of the most powerful people in the galaxy try to break a young woman just for the sport of it.
Oh my God.
And I watched her stand there with a spine made of steel and refuse to give them the satisfaction of seeing her collapse. He leaned forward, his elbows on his knees. I told my commander that day that if I ever had to negotiate with the Empire, I wanted to find the woman who stood in the fire and did not burn.
I need to move.
I knew then that you were the only person on that station worth talking to. Lyris stared at him. The shame of that memory, which she had carried like a stone in her chest for years, suddenly shifted. He had not seen a victim. He had seen a survivor. "You planned it," she said, a wonder taking root in her voice. "The breach of protocol. The chair.
Oh my god.
I figured if I was going to cause an incident, I might as well do it with the right partner," Adrian said softly. Lyris looked down at her hands. The silver veins were glowing softly, a steady, rhythmic pulse. She realized, with a jolt of terror and thrill, that she was no longer just running away. She was running towards something.
Holy
"We need fuel," Adrian announced 2 hours later, "and food. The protein blocks in the galley taste like despair. They dropped out of warp near a moon called Oxa.
crazy.
It was a neutral zone, which meant it was a hive of smugglers,
God.
scavengers, and merchants who asked no questions as long as the credit chips cleared.
Oh my god.
The landing bay was a chaotic sprawl of rusting gantries and steam vents. Adrian landed the Stardust Runner between a freighter hauling livestock and a customized fighter that looked like it had been stolen from a museum.
You can ask
"Keep
me
your hood
if I
up,"
cried the first time.
Adrian warned as they lowered the ramp, "and try to look less like you own the place."
I can't cry.
Lyris pulled the rough woolen cloak they had scavenged tight around her face. "I can blend in." They walked into the bazaar. It was an assault on the senses.
In 4 weeks.
The air smelled of roasting meat, unwashed bodies, and starship fuel. Strange music thumped from underground cantinas. Merchants shouted in a dozen dialects. Adrian moved with an easy rolling gait,
Oh my god.
his hand resting casually near the blaster concealed under his jacket. Lyris walked beside him.
What's in this
She
corner?
tried to slouch. She tried to look inconspicuous.
Thank you,
But
thank
20
you.
years of royal posture training was a hard habit to
I was
break.
feeling myself recently.
She moved through the mud with the grace of a swan gliding over a sewer.
Personal stuff and
They stopped at a stall selling fuel cells. The merchant,
made me feel even
a
worse.
reptilian humanoid with one eye, looked them over.
Self-care.
"I need 2 standard ion cells," Adrian said. 500 credits. The merchant grunted. "That is robbery," Adrian said. 300, 450. The merchant
Let me
countered.
enter my-
Lyris stepped
Give
forward.
me 1 second.
She felt she should contribute. She had studied economics. She understood value. "My good sir," she said, her voice ringing out with the crystal-clear enunciation of the High Court. "Surely you can see that the market fluctuation in this sector renders that price an absurdity. We shall offer you 350, and we shall consider it a kindness." The merchant stared at her. The crowd around them fell silent.
Also, hi, Sheree.
A group of rough-looking miners near a fire pit turned to look.
Are you going to Friends
Adrian
Miss?
closed his eyes briefly,
Please
looking
tell me you're
pained.
going to Friends Miss.
"You talk like a magistrate," the merchant sneered, leaning over the counter.
Please tell me.
"You a Fed? Or just some lost princess slumming it?" Lyris bristled.
Also, I'm gonna
"I am
need
simply
this.
negotiating." "You are attracting attention," Adrian muttered. He slammed a handful of chips onto the counter.
Hey.
400. Keep the change.
That's a lot. I have to talk
He
to
grabbed the
somebody.
fuel cells and grabbed Lyris's arm, steering her quickly away from the stall as heads turned to follow them.
Okay, let's
"I
see what
thought I was quite persuasive," Lyris whispered indignantly as they hurried through an alleyway. "Lyris," Adrian said, a laugh bubbling under his breath. "You told a spice smuggler that his
I
price
didn't
was an
get that
absurdity.
part out.
You sounded like you were about to sentence him to the salt mines. You have to slouch more, grunt a little." "I do not grunt,"
really need to call
Lyris
that.
said, lifting her chin.
I'm
"I
out
know,"
track for
Adrian
what?
said,
Are you
glancing at her with
serious
amusement.
or something?
"That is the problem."
My God.
The humor of the moment shattered instantly. A shadow detached itself from the wall ahead of them,
You don't play Fortnite?
then another behind them.
Play with us.
They were tall, faceless figures encased in matte black armor that seemed to absorb the ambient light. They made no sound, no footsteps, no breathing. "Quiet units," Adrian hissed. He dropped the fuel cells. "Run." They bolted down a side street. The assassins moved with terrifying speed, scaling the walls like spiders. A silent energy bolt sizzled past Lyris's ear, scorching the brickwork.
Charles.
Adrian fired back blindly, the loud report of his kinetic pistol echoing through the bazaar. The chaos of the market erupted into panic. People screamed and scattered.
Oh my god.
They reached the landing bay. The Stardust Runner was still open. "Get in!" Adrian roared, shoving Lyris up the ramp. He turned and fired 3 rapid shots at the pursuing shadows, forcing them into cover. He scrambled up the ramp and hit the seal button. The door hissed shut just as a heavy thud shook the hull. "One of them is on the roof!" Lyris shouted, strapping into the co-pilot seat. Adrian threw himself into the pilot's chair and slammed the throttle forward. The ship lurched into the sky, tearing through the atmospheric shield. He rolled the ship violently, spinning 360 degrees. There was a screech of tearing metal, and then silence. "Did we lose him?" Lyris asked, her breath coming in short gasps. "Sensors are clear," Adrian said, wiping sweat from his forehead. "That was too close. They are tracking us faster than I thought."
Let me know.
They reached the coordinates of the Veil relic 2 days later. It was located in the heart of the ionized aurora, a storm of magnetic gas that spanned 3 light years. The colors were blinding, sheets of emerald, violet, and burning gold shifting in the vacuum. There, floating in the eye of the storm, was the cathedral ship. It was ancient. Its hull was not metal, but a dark, glass-like substance that seemed to have grown rather than been built. Spires and flying buttresses stretched out into the void, giving it the appearance of a Gothic castle torn from the earth and cast into the stars. It was dead, dark, and silent. The Stardust Runner drifted closer. As they approached, Lyris felt a physical pull in her chest. Her skin began to glow brighter, the silver veins pulsing in time with a rhythm she could feel in her bones. "It knows I am here," she whispered. Adrian brought them into a docking bay that opened automatically at their approach. They suited up in pressure gear, though the ship's internal sensors indicated a breathable atmosphere. They boarded the relic. The interior was vast. The ceilings were vaulted and lost in shadow. The walls were lined with statues of the Veil ancestors, their faces worn by time. There was no power, no hum of machinery, just a silence so deep it felt holy. Lyris walked ahead, drawn by an invisible thread. Adrian followed, his weapon drawn, scanning the shadows. They reached the central bridge, which looked more like an altar. A single pedestal stood in the center, topped with a crystalline interface. Lyris approached it. The bioluminescence in her skin flared, casting long, dancing shadows against the walls. The ship responded. Lines of light ignited in the floor, racing up the pillars, illuminating the stained glass viewports that looked out into the aurora. The ship woke up, not with a mechanical whine, but with a sound like a choir inhaling. Voice authorization required. A disembodied voice spoke. It was not a machine voice. It sounded like a recorded memory. Lyris placed her hand on the pedestal. She knew the words. They had been taught to her as a nursery rhyme, a meaningless tradition. Now, she understood they were a command. "I am Lyris, of the blood of the light," she said clearly. "We serve the light that does not burn. We are the shield that does not break." The ship shuddered. A holographic map exploded into existence above the pedestal, filling the room. It showed the entire empire, every system, every star, and connected to each star was a dormant node. "What is it?" Adrian asked, stepping up beside her. "It is the Aegis," Lyris said, reading the data scrolling through her mind. "It is not a weapon. Adrian, it is a shield, a planetary defense network designed to neutralize aggressive kinetic energy. It can stop orbital bombardments. It can disable invasion fleets. She turned to him, her eyes wide. It was built to prevent tyranny, to stop any one house from holding a planet hostage. If I activate this, House Core's fleet becomes useless. They cannot bomb worlds into submission. They cannot enforce a coup. That is why they called you a genetic liability, Adrian realized. Because you are the key to peace, and peace is bad for business when you are selling war. The realization hung between them. Lyris was not just a woman running for her life. She was the failsafe for a galaxy on the edge of darkness. The ship groaned. The proximity alarms on Adrian's wrist comp began to wail. "They found us," he said. They retreated to the Stardust Runner, deciding to transmit the activation codes from the safety of their own ship rather than remaining in the stationary target of the relic. In the small confines of the courier ship's cabin, the air was thick with the magnitude of what they had discovered. They had the truth. They had the power to stop a war. But they were two people against an empire. Lyris sat on the edge of the bunk, her hands trembling as the adrenaline crashed. Adrian stood by the door, watching her. The silence stretched, but it was not empty. It was filled with the magnetic pull that had been building for days. Adrian moved. He did not ask for permission this time. The question had been asked and answered in 100 small glances over the last week. He walked to her and knelt between her knees, his hands resting on her waist. Lyris looked down at him. The fear of being used, of being a political object, was gone. In its place was a fierce, terrifying desire. "Adrian," she whispered. He stood, pulling her up with him. His hands moved to her face, his thumbs tracing the line of her jaw. "I am not leaving," he said, answering the fear she hadn't spoken. "I am right here." He kissed her. It was not like the desperate kiss on the escape from the station. This was slow, deliberate, a claiming that went both ways. Lyris felt the walls of her reserve crumble. She wrapped her arms around his neck, pulling him closer, pressing her body against the hard lines of his. The sensation was overwhelming, the heat of him, the smell of him, the roughness of his hands against the silk of her ruined gown. They moved together toward the bunk. It was a surrender, but it was also a rebellion. In a galaxy that wanted them dead, this act of connection was a defiance of the void. Adrian's touch was reverent, treating her not as a queen or a weapon, but as a woman. He paused as he unfastened the clasp of her gown, his eyes searching hers for any sign of hesitation. Lyris gave him none. She touched the scars on his chest, tracing them with fingers that glowed with soft, violet light. "I choose this," she said, her voice fierce and low. "I choose you." The intimacy that followed was a blur of sensation and emotion. It was raw and honest, a desperate affirmation of life in the face of death. For an hour, the war did not exist. The empire did not exist. There was only the warmth of skin, the murmur of names, and the profound transformative power of being known. The reality returned with the brutal chime of the communications console. Adrian pulled away reluctantly, pressing a kiss to Lyris's forehead before reaching for his shirt. Lyris wrapped the sheet around herself, feeling a strange new strength. She was not diminished. She was fortified. Adrian activated the console. A holographic newsfeed projected into the center of the room. It was the Imperial State broadcast. The face of the High Chancellor of House Core filled the air. "Citizens of the Empire," the Chancellor intoned gravely. "We have uncovered a plot of devastating treachery. The disgraced Lyris Vale has conspired with human agents to facilitate an invasion of our sacred borders." The image shifted. It showed a doctored video of Lyris standing on the bridge of the relic ship. But the audio was faked. Instead of the oath,
Give me.
she was heard ordering the targeting of Imperial orphanage moons. She has been declared traitor extremis, the Chancellor continued. She is stripped of all titles. Her citizenship is revoked. Any citizen found aiding her will be executed. The feed cut to static, then replaced by a direct encrypted channel from Earth Command. An older woman with steel-gray hair appeared. Admiral Vance, Envoy Vale, the Admiral said, her voice clipped. We have seen the broadcast. The political fallout is catastrophic. You are ordered to disengage immediately. Adrian stood straight, buttoning his shirt. Admiral, the broadcast is a fabrication. Lyris Vale is the key to a defense network that can ensure stability. That is not your call. Adrian, the Admiral snapped, Earth cannot be seen aiding a declared traitor. You are to drop the asset at the nearest neutral port and return to Terra. If you remain with her, you will be considered rogue. You will be court-martialed. Adrian looked at the Admiral. Then he looked at Lyris. She was sitting on the bunk, the sheet clutched to her chest, the glow of her skin illuminating the dark cabin. She looked at him with no expectation, only a quiet, heartbreaking acceptance that he would leave, that everyone left. Adrian turned back to the screen. Admiral, he said, his voice steady. I respectfully decline. Excuse me, Vance said, her eyes widening. I am not disengaging, Adrian said. The asset is not a traitor. She is the rightful guardian of the sector, and I am not leaving her. You are throwing away your career. Vale, you are throwing away your life. Then I will make a new one, Adrian said. Vale out. He severed the connection. The room fell silent. Lyris stood up, letting the sheet fall as she pulled her dress back on. Her hands were shaking. You just committed treason against your own planet, she said. Adrian turned to her. I told you, I don't leave my allies. Lyris walked to him and took his face in her hands. You are a fool, Adrian Vale. I am a man who knows where he belongs, he said. The ship lurched violently. The proximity alarm screamed. The hull groaned as a massive kinetic impact slammed into the rear shields. They are here, Adrian shouted, spinning to the pilot's seat. Quiet units. 3 of them, decloaking right on top of them. Lyris strapped herself in. Shields are down to 40%. Adrian threw the ship into a dive, heading straight for the gravity well of the nearest planet, a frontier world of jagged rock and storm clouds. I can't shake them, Adrian yelled over the roar of the engines. They've locked our thrusters. A second impact tore through the port wing. The Stardust runner began to spin uncontrollably. The horizon of the planet rushed up to meet them, a blur of brown and gray. Brace for impact, Adrian screamed, reaching out to cover Lyris's hand with his own on the console. Lyris gripped his hand tight. She did not close her eyes. She watched the ground rushing toward them, her biolight flaring bright enough to light up the cockpit. She was a traitor. She was unwanted.
Oh my God.
She was crashing onto a world with no law.
Made a lot of noise.
But as the ground slammed into them and the world went black, her last thought was not of fear. It was of the man holding her hand,
I gotta go.
and the choice that had saved her soul before it saved her life. Kestrel 9 was a world that had forgotten how to be gentle. It was a ball of oxidized rock and howling winds on the very edge of the charts,
Oh my God.
a place where the Empire's laws were treated as distant, amusing suggestions. The sky was the color of a bruised peach, and the ground was a patchwork of red dust and jagged shale that chewed through boot soles in a week. In the settlement of Iron Deep, a sprawling shantytown built into the skeletal remains of a crashed dreadnought from the last Great War. Lyris Vale was learning the art of invisibility. It was a different kind of invisibility than she was used to.
Well then.
On Aurelia Spire,
Let me just
She had been invisible because people chose not to see her. Here, invisibility was a survival skill. It meant wearing rough-spun tunics that scratched her skin. It meant wrapping thick bandages around her arms and neck to hide the bioluminescent pulse of her veins. It meant keeping her head down when the guild enforcers walked the perimeter. But she was not hiding alone. Inside the cramped subterranean habitat they had rented with the last of their bartered credits. The air hummed with the sound of a very unhappy machine. "This is undignified," a metallic voice complained. It emanated from a rusted, hovering sensor unit that looked like a flying toaster with a lens stuck to the front. "The dust-to-sensor ratio in this hovel is 35%. I am an archival intelligence, not a vacuum cleaner." "Sparky," Adrian said without looking up from the weapon he was disassembling on the table. "If you complain one more time, I am going to install your core into a waste disposal unit." "The waste unit might have better airflow," Sparky retorted, bobbing indignantly in the air. "And Lyris, your heart rate is elevated again. Are we stressed, or just brooding?" Lyris ignored the drone and tightened the strap on her bracer. "I am not brooding. I am preparing." She stood near the ventilation grate, the only source of fresh air in the room. She looked different. The soft, terrified noblewoman who had fled the gala was gone. In her place was someone leaner, harder. Her hair was braided back tightly, woven with copper wire to keep it from floating in the static-charged air. There was dirt under her fingernails. Real dirt, not the polite garden soil of the palace. "I am going to the kinetic range," she said. "Jory promised to show me how to overload a power cell without blowing off my own hand." Adrian looked up then. The weeks of hiding had changed him too. His beard had grown in, shadowing the sharp line of his jaw. The charcoal uniform of the Terran envoy was gone, replaced by a miner's jacket and heavy trousers. He looked tired, the weight of a galaxy-sized decision pressing on his shoulders. But his eyes, when they found hers, were still the same anchors she relied on. "Be careful," he said. "The guild patrols are doubling their rotations." "I am always careful," Lyris said. "You are never careful," Adrian corrected softly. "You are brave. There is a difference." Lyris felt a flush of warmth that had nothing to do with the stifling heat of the habitat. She nodded once, pulled her hood up, and stepped out into the wind. The resistance on Kestrel 9 was not a noble rebellion. It was a union of exhausted people who just wanted the Empire to stop taxing the air they breathed. Jory, their unofficial leader, was a woman made of gristle and scar tissue who chewed stimroot and spat on the ground whenever the Emperor's name was mentioned. She watched Lyris dismantle a heavy repeater rifle with blindfolded eyes. "Faster," Jory barked. "You are thinking about it. Don't think. Feel the metal. The gun doesn't care about your politics. Princess, it only cares if you respect its mechanism." Lyris slotted the barrel back into place and racked the slide. 4 seconds, better," Jory grunted. "But you are still standing like you are posing for a portrait. Wide stance. Lower your center of gravity. If you get hit, you need to be a rock, not a flower." Lyris adjusted her feet, digging her boots into the red dust. "I am not a flower." "No," Jory said, eyeing her. "You're something else. I haven't figured it out yet. You glow when you get angry. That is not normal, even for the highborn." "It is a target," Lyris said bitterly. "It is a warning," Jory corrected. "Learn to use it later." Sitting on the edge of a methane vent that overlooked the settlement, Lyris watched the miners trudge home. They were bent double under the weight of their gear, their faces gray with fatigue. These were the people her family had sworn to protect in the ancient oaths. And for centuries, Her family had let them rot. She realized then that strategy was not about moving ships on a holographic board. It was about understanding what people needed to survive. The Empire ruled through fear. Fear of hunger, fear of the void, fear of the other. If she wanted to defeat House Core, she did not need a bigger fleet. She needed to offer a freedom that was stronger than their fear. She returned to the habitat to find Adrian staring at a datapad, his head in his hands. The portable Sparky unit was hovering silently nearby. Sensing the mood was too heavy for commentary. "Adrian?" Lyris asked, closing the door against the howling wind. He looked up. His eyes were red-rimmed. "I got a ping from the relay boy," he said, his voice raspy. "Earth Command has officially disavowed me. They have labeled me a rogue agent compromised by alien radicalization." Lyris felt a sharp pang of guilt. It was a familiar companion these days. "I am sorry," she said softly. "You lost everything because of me." Adrian stood up and walked to the small viewport, looking out at the bleak landscape. "I did not lose everything," he said. "I lost a rank. I lost a pension. But I look at the news feeds. Lyris, the Terran Coalition is mobilizing fleets to the border. The Empire is moving dreadnoughts to the Veil. If this goes wrong, if we fail, I will be the man who started the first interstellar war." He turned to her, and the vulnerability in his face broke her heart. "I can handle being an outcast," he said. "I cannot handle being the reason billions die. Did I make the right choice, Lyris? Or was it just selfishness?" Lyris crossed the room. She did not touch him immediately. She knew he needed an answer, not just comfort. "You chose to save a life rather than follow a protocol," she said. "If that is selfishness, then the galaxy needs more of it. The war was coming anyway. Adrian, House Core was building those weapons long before you sat at my table. You just forced them to show their hand before they were ready." She reached out then, taking his rough hand in hers. "You did not start this fire," she whispered. "You just handed me the match." Adrian squeezed her hand, exhaling a long, shuddering breath. He pulled her into a hug, burying his face in the crook of her neck. He smelled of dust and engine oil, but to Lyris, he smelled like safety. "We are going to fix this," he murmured against her skin. "I know," she said, "because we have no other choice." The turning point came 3 days later, in the scavenger's market. Lyris was bartering for water filters, a task she had become surprisingly adept at when she felt eyes on her. Not the predatory gaze of an assassin, but something smaller, timid. She turned to see a child peeking out from behind a stack of rusted crates. It was a girl, no older than 10, with wide, dark eyes and skin that bore the faint, mottled patches of radiation sickness, a common affliction on Kestrel 9. Lyris finished her transaction and walked over. The girl tried to scramble away, but she tripped over her own oversized boots. "It is all right," Lyris said, crouching down. She kept her voice low, the way she used to speak to herself in the mirrors of the palace. "I am not going to hurt you." The girl froze, looking at Lyris with a mixture of fear and awe. "You are the Light Lady," the girl whispered. Lyris stiffened. "Where did you hear that name?" "The miners talk," the girl said. "They say you glow in the dark, like a ghost." "I am not a ghost," Lyris said. The girl looked down at her own hands, covered in the blotchy red marks of her sickness. "My mama says I am wrong," the girl said, her voice trembling. "She says I have the sickness and I take up too much space and I can't be seen in the main plaza because it scares the traders." The words hit Lyris like a physical blow. They were the echo of her own childhood, spoken in a different voice, on a different world, unfit, Wrong. Liability. Lyris reached out. She ignored the dirt, ignored the radiation burns. She took the girl's small hands in her own. "What is your name?" Lyris asked. "Ilara," the girl said. "Ilara," Lyris said firmly, forcing the girl to meet her eyes. "Look at me." She let the control slip. She let the bandages loosen slightly. The bioluminescence beneath her skin flared, a soft, radiant violet light that bathed the dusty alley in a royal glow.
I've been enjoying it.
Ilara's eyes went wide. "I was told I was wrong too," Lyris said. "I was told I was broken. I was told to hide in the dark so I would not offend the eyes of important people." She squeezed Ilara's hands. But they were lying. The people who tell you to make yourself small are the ones who are afraid of how big you are. Do not hide, Ilara. Never hide. You take up exactly as much space as you deserve. Ilara looked at Lyris's glowing hands, then back at her face. A slow, tentative smile broke through the grime on the girl's face. "You look like a queen," Ilara whispered. Lyris smiled back, and for the first time, the word did not feel like a mockery. "No," she said, "I look like myself, and so do you." She gave the girl the water filters she had just bought. "Take these to your mother. Tell her the light lady said you are necessary." As she watched Ilara run back toward the shanties, clutching the filters like treasure, Lyris felt something shift inside her. The last remnant of the girl who wanted to be saved evaporated. She did not want to be saved. She wanted to be the savior she had never had. The crisis arrived that evening. Sparky, floating above the holistic map table Adrian had jury-rigged, began to emit a shrill alarm. "Unacceptable data incoming," the AI screeched. "I have decrypted a burst transmission from the local comms boy. It is heavily encrypted with house core ciphers, but my processing power is superior, and their coding is derivative. Show us," Adrian commanded. The map flickered. A red trajectory line appeared, originating from a cloaked fleet in the outer rim and terminating at a moon called Odera. "Odera?" Lyris asked. "That is a neutral agricultural colony. It feeds half the sector." Sparky bobbed ominously. "The transmission is an attack order. The core fleet is going to bombard Odera using captured Terran weapon signatures. They are going to frame Earth," Adrian said, his face draining of color. "They destroy a neutral food source, blame it on a human strike force, and the entire empire will rally behind core to demand a war of extermination. It justifies the coup and the martial law in one stroke." "When?" Lyris asked. 48 hours, Sparky said. "We can't stop them," Adrian said, pacing the small room. "We have one courier ship and a handful of mining lasers. That is a bombardment fleet. We do not need a fleet," Lyris said. Her voice was terrifyingly calm. "We have the Aegis." Adrian stopped pacing. He looked at her. "Lyris, we talked about this. The relic ship requires a biological interface to activate the network remotely." "Yes," Lyris said. "The text in the archives was specific," Adrian said, his voice rising. "The biovariant is a key, but the lock is massive. To wake up a galaxy-wide network from a single node, the feedback loop will be enormous. It says it requires total integration." "I know what it says," Lyris replied. "It means it will rewrite you," Adrian said. He walked over to her, gripping her shoulders. "It could burn out your neural pathways. It could change your physiology permanently. You might not come back as Lyris. You could become just a component of the machine." Lyris looked up at him. "I know the cost, Adrian." "Then why are you considering it?" he demanded. "We can find another way. We can broadcast the evidence." "They will block the broadcast," Lyris said. "Or they will claim it is faked." And while we argue with the truth, Odera will burn. Millions of people. Adrian. People like Alara. She pulled away from him, walking to the center of the room. I have spent my life guarding this mutation like it was a shame. But it is not a shame. It is a duty. The Vile were not just rulers, we were the shield. If I have to give up my humanity to save them, then that is the price of the crown I never wanted. No, Adrian said. He closed the distance between them in 2 strides. He did not grab her this time. He stopped inches from her face, his body radiating a heat and intensity that made the air tremble. I did not fly across the galaxy to watch you sacrifice yourself on the altar of duty, he said, his voice low and fierce. I did not fall in love with a martyr. I fell in love with a woman who likes bad jokes and hates the cold and argues with market vendors. He reached up, cupping her face, his thumbs brushing the glowing skin. I want you, Lyris, not the weapon, not the queen, just you. And I am selfish enough to want you whole. Lyris's breath hitched. She leaned into his touch, closing her eyes. The temptation to just run, to hide with him in the dust and let the galaxy burn was so strong it made her knees weak. But she opened her eyes. If I do nothing, she said, tears spilling over, then the part of me you love, the part that is brave, it will die anyway. I cannot live with the silence of millions of ghosts. Adrian, I would resent you for saving me. Adrian stared at her for a long, agonizing moment. He saw the resolve in her eyes. He saw the fear too, but the resolve was stronger. He exhaled, a sound like a defeated prayer. You are asking me to help you jump off a cliff, he said. I am asking you to hold my hand while I fly, she whispered. Adrian rested his forehead against hers. Okay, he said. Okay, but we do it on our terms. We limit the exposure. We activate the shield for Odera, and then we sever the connection immediately. I will be right there monitoring your vitals. If you start to drift, if the machine tries to keep you, I will pull you out, even if I have to destroy the interface. Do you promise? She asked. I promise, he said. The air between them changed. The argument dissolved into something else, a shared, desperate understanding of what was to come. Adrian kissed her. It was not gentle. It was fierce, possessive, a seal on a pact that defied the odds. He kissed her like he was trying to memorize the taste of her soul. Lyris responded with everything she had, pouring her fear and her love into the contact. It was an act of worship and defiance. They were 2 small flames in a very dark universe, burning brighter because they knew the wind was coming. When they broke apart, breathless and trembling, Adrian kept his hands on her waist. I am not losing you, he said. That is my condition. Lyris nodded. Then let's go start a revolution. The resistance gathered in the main hangar of the crash site. Jory stood on a crate, looking at Lyris with new respect. You want to use our comms tower to do what? Jory asked. To wake up the sky, Lyris said. She stood tall, no longer hiding her glow. The bandages were gone. She wore a flight suit Adrian had modified for her, reinforced with conductive weaves. We are going to link the Veil Relic's remote protocols through your tower, Lyris explained. It will amplify my signal and activate the Aegis grid around Odera. It will neutralize the kinetic energy of the core bombardment. And then, Jory asked. And then, Lyris said, I am going to talk to the Empire. Jory spat on the floor. It's a suicide run. The energy spike will light us up for every Imperial sensor in the sector. They will be here in an hour. We only need 20 minutes, Adrian said. Jory looked at Adrian, then at Lyris. She grinned, revealing a gold tooth. I always hated the quiet anyway. Let's make some noise. The preparations were frantic. Sparky integrated himself into the comms tower's mainframe, complaining loudly about the primitive architecture. Adrian rigged a localized dampening field to protect Lyris from the worst of the feedback. Lyris stood in the center of the array. Cables were attached to the conductive ports on her suit. She felt the hum of the dormant network waiting for her, a vast, sleeping ocean of data and power. "Are you ready?" Adrian asked. He was at the console, his hand hovering over the kill switch. Lyris took a deep breath. She looked at the dusty, rust-colored walls of the hangar. She looked at Alara, who was watching from the doorway. She looked at Adrian. She closed her eyes. Ready. Adrian engaged the link. The world exploded into white. Lyris screamed, and it was not pain. Exactly, it was an expansion. Her mind was suddenly everywhere. She felt the orbit of the moons. She felt the cold vacuum of the void. She felt the sleeping nodes of the Aegis grid buried in the crust of 1,000 worlds. Identify, the network thundered in her mind. I am Lyris, she projected. I am the choice. She pushed past the overwhelming data, reaching out for the Odera system. She saw the core fleet, jagged shapes moving in the dark. She saw the weapons charging. No, she commanded. She slammed the mental key into the lock. On the moon of Odera, light years away, the ground shook. Massive spires of ancient crystal erupted from the soil. A dome of shimmering golden energy unfurled over the colony, a hard light shield of impenetrable density. The core ships fired. The plasma bolts struck the shield and dissolved into harmless showers of sparks. In the hangar on Kestrel 9, Lyris arched her back, light pouring from her eyes, her mouth, her very pores. She was burning with the power of a star. Her biology fought the intrusion. The network tried to overwrite her, to make her a permanent processor. It felt cold and logical and safe. It offered an end to pain, an end to fear. Stay, the network whispered. Be the queen of silence. Lyris felt herself drifting. It would be so easy to just stop being human. Then she heard a voice. Lyris. It was Adrian. He was shouting, but his voice sounded miles away. I want you, not the weapon. She remembered the promise. She remembered the girl with the dirt on her face. She remembered the taste of the protein blocks and the smell of the rain on Adrian's jacket. She grabbed onto those memories like anchors. I am not yours, she told the machine. I am mine. She forced the connection open just enough to broadcast, but kept her mind walled off from the integration. Sparky! Now! Adrian yelled. The AI routed the signal. Lyris opened her mouth and her voice was broadcast across every frequency, every screen, every holopad in the sector. This is Lyris Vael, she said, and her voice resonated with the harmonic power of the network. You were told I was a defect. You were told I was unwanted. You were told I was a traitor. On Aurelia's spire, the court froze. In the slums of Terra, people looked up. On the bridge of the core flagship, the High Chancellor stared in horror as his screens were hijacked. I am speaking to you now not as a princess, but as the shield you were promised. Lyris continued. House Core has attacked Odera to trick you into war. But the Aegis has awakened. The old protections are back. She gasped, fighting the strain. Blood trickled from her nose, glowing silver. They want you to be afraid. They want you to believe that power belongs only to the silent. But I am done being silent. The empire belongs to the people who build it, not the ones who burn it. She looked directly into the camera drone Adrian was holding. I am Lyris Vael, and I am coming home. Adrian slammed the kill switch. The connection severed. The light died. Lyris collapsed. Adrian caught her before she hit the floor. She was burning hot, her skin feverish. Lyris? He panicked. Lyris, breathe. She lay limp in his arms for a terrifying second. Then, her eyelids fluttered. The blinding white glow faded, settling back into the soft violet shimmer he knew.
No, dude, just try
She
it.
coughed, a ragged human sound. Did I slouch? She whispered weakly. Adrian laughed, a sound that was half sob. He pulled her close, rocking her back and forth. No, he said. You stood tall. You were perfect. Lyris rested her head against his chest. She felt drained, hollowed out, but she was still there. She was still Lyris.
Do it.
Outside, the sky of Kestrel 9 began to roar with the sound of incoming engines.
You got this.
They are here! Jory shouted from the door, racking her rifle. Adrian helped Lyris stand. She swayed, but she found her footing. She looked at him, and the love in her eyes was fiercer than any shield. Let them come, she said. The return to Aurelia's Spire was not a stealth mission. It was a procession. The Stardust Runner, scarred from the atmospheric entry on Kestrel 9 and patched with mismatched hull plating, led the formation. Flanking it were the ragtag vessels of the Border Coalition, heavy ore haulers converted into troop transports, atmospheric skiffs rigged for void travel, and a squadron of Terran escort fighters that had defected from the blockade line in defiance of Earth Command. They did not look like an invasion force. They looked like a riot. Lyris Voyle stood on the bridge of the courier ship, watching the spire grow in the viewport. It was still the same glittering needle of diamond and duranium, spinning lazily against the backdrop of the nebula. But to Lyris, it no longer looked like a fortress of unassailable power. It looked like a fragile glass ornament waiting for a stone. We are hailing them on all frequencies, Adrian said from the pilot's seat. He was back in his dress uniform, though it was wrinkled and smelled faintly of ozone. His badge of office was missing, stripped by the Admiral, but he wore the empty space on his chest like a medal. Station Control is ordering us to power down and prepare for boarding, Adrian continued. They have locked targeting solutions on the entire fleet. Let them lock, Lyris said calmly. Her skin was humming, a low-level bioluminescence that made the air around her shimmer. They will not fire. The entire galaxy is watching. She was right. The broadcast from Kestrel 9 had done its work. The feed of Lyris invoking the Aegis had been shared across 1 trillion screens. The narrative had fractured. Half the galaxy called her the traitor queen, a puppet of human expansionism. The other half called her the shield bearer, the only royal who had ever lifted a finger to save a colony. The political battlefield had shifted from the shadows of the council room to the public court of opinion, and House Core was terrified. The docking rings of the spire were in chaos, while the official hangars were locked down. Lyris guided their shuttle toward an auxiliary waste port near the station's equator. It was an undignified entrance for a royal claimant, but Lyris had learned that dignity was less important than leverage. They were met not by guards, but by allies, a contingent of dissident imperial officers wearing black armbands over their house crests, secured the airlock. "Hi, lady," the lead officer said, saluting sharply. He was young, his eyes wide as he took in the glow of her skin. "We have secured a path to the lower lift shafts, but the council chamber is sealed. The regent has moved up the session. They are voting on the Succession Act in 1 hour. They are trying to install a puppet before I can get there," Lyris said, checking the charge on her kinetic bracer. "Then we should hurry," Adrian said. He checked his sidearm, then looked at Lyris. "Stay behind me in the corridors." Lyris looked at him. We walked side by side. "Adrian, that is the point." They moved through the station's arteries. The spire was a city in verticality, and as they ascended from the industrial routes toward the aristocratic canopy, the resistance met them. It was not a battle of blasters, but of access.
Oh, why is it?
Station workers opened sealed bulkheads. Maintenance crews disabled security cameras. The invisible people of the station, the ones who changed the filters and scrubbed the floors, paved the way for the unwanted princess. They reached the service entrance to the Grand Council chamber. It was a massive door of archaic bronze, sealed with bio-locks that had not been updated in 4 centuries because the ruling families believed them impenetrable. Lyra stepped forward. She placed her hand on the sensor plate. The metal grew warm. The bioluminescence in her veins spiked, interfacing with the ancient circuitry embedded in the door. The system recognized the signature, not just the genetic code, but the specific energy resonance of the Voil lineage that Sparky the AI had helped her unlock. Identity confirmed. The door's mechanism rumbled, dust falling from the frame. Welcome home, Guardian. The doors groaned open. The Grand Council chamber was a theater of panic. Hundreds of delegates from the great houses were shouting over one another. In the center of the room, on the floating dais, stood Lord Valius Kor. He was the heir apparent, a man who wore his cruelty like a tailored suit. He was shouting for order, his face flushed. The doors slammed open with a sound like a thunderclap. The shouting died instantly. Lyris walked in. She wore no jewelry, no silk. She wore a flight suit stained with the red dust of Kestrel 9 and a jacket borrowed from a miner. But she glowed with a terrifying, ethereal light that cast long shadows across the floor. Adrian walked beside her, his hand resting on his weapon, his eyes scanning the gallery. Behind them, a dozen armed dissidents fanned out. Lord Valius froze. He looked at Lyris, then at the guards who were hesitating. "Seize her," Valius screamed. "She is a traitor to the throne." No one moved. The guards looked at the glowing woman who had just walked through an unopenable door, and then they looked at their paymasters, and they did the math of survival. "I am not a traitor, Valius," Lyris said. Her voice was not loud, but it carried to the highest tier of the gallery. "I am the evidence you tried to burn." She walked to the center of the floor, directly beneath the dais. "You told the galaxy that I orchestrated the attack on Odera," Lyris said. "You claimed I was conspiring with Earth to weaken the Empire." She pointed to the floating holopads recording the session. "Sparky, if you would be so kind." From the pocket of Adrian's jacket, the portable AI unit floated up. It projected a massive holographic screen into the center of the chamber, generating evidence of treason. Sparky chirped. "Oh, wait. Processing error. Playing file. Core hypocrisy. Compilation V4. The screen did not show the damning flight logs immediately. Instead, it showed a series of candid, humiliating clips of Lord Valius and his father. There was Valius complaining that the peasants smell like wet dog, while publicly praising the working class. There was his father, the High Chancellor, struggling to open a ration pack and throwing a tantrum. The clips were set to a comically jaunty tune that sounded like a circus march. A ripple of shocked laughter broke the tension in the room. It was a tactical strike. It stripped the House of Kor of its most valuable asset, fear. "Oops," Sparky said, spinning in the air. "My logic processors are so clumsy today. Here is the real file." The image shifted. The humor vanished. The screen displayed the decrypted comms logs from the Kor flagship. It showed the orders to fire on the neutral colony. It showed the transfer of funds to the mercenary guilds to hunt Lyris down. It showed the blueprints for the weaponized drones currently hidden in the station's cargo hold. The silence in the chamber was absolute. "This is a fabrication," Valius roared, his composure shattering. "A deep fake created by human AI." "Is it?" Adrian asked, stepping forward. He projected a document from his own datapad. This is the energy signature of the weapons used at Odera. It matches the inventory of the Imperial Armory, not Earth's. And these, he gestured to the gallery, are the bank transfers authorized by your personal code. Valius, unless you are claiming your biometrics were also faked. Valius looked around the room. He saw the doubt in the eyes of the other houses. He saw the reformist faction rising to their feet. He realized the political game was lost. So he flipped the board. Kill them, Valius screamed. Execute Protocol 0. The wall panels of the chamber slid open. From the hidden recesses, combat drones poured out. They were sleek, black machines armed with rapid-fire plasma cannons. They were illegal inside the station, a violation of the sacred peace of the spire. But Kor had brought them anyway. The delegates screamed and scrambled for cover. Target the Veil Witch, Valius commanded. The drones swiveled, their barrels glowing red. Lyris did not run. She did not draw a weapon. She closed her eyes and inhaled. The bio-variant in her blood roared to life. She reached out with her mind, not to the station's computer, but to the dormant Aegis nodes embedded in the station's very superstructure, the ancient defense grid that the Veil had built into the bones of the Empire. Shield, she commanded. The air around her and Adrian distorted. A geometric lattice of hard light materialized instantly, forming a golden dome over them. The drones fired. The plasma bolts struck the barrier and dissipated in harmless ripples of energy. The sound was deafening, a continuous roar of impacting heat. But inside the dome, the air was still. Lyris opened her eyes. They were burning with white fire. She expanded her hands. The shield grew. It pushed outward, not just covering her, but expanding to cover the reformist delegates, the cowering neutrals, even the guards. I told you, Lyris said, her voice amplified by the resonance of the shield. I am not a weapon. I am the wall you cannot break. She flicked her wrist. The energy of the shield pulsed outward in a kinetic wave. It did not hurt the people, but it slammed into the hovering drones, overloading their stabilizers and smashing them against the walls. Metal rained down on the council floor. Valius stood on the dais, alone, his personal guard having fled the shockwave. He looked down at Lyris, his face twisted in hate. You are a freak, he spat. A genetic mistake. The sound of a slow, rhythmic clapping echoed from the high entrance behind the dais. Everyone turned. The massive golden doors of the Imperial box, which had been sealed for 6 months, slid open. 2 medical droids hovered out, supporting a frail figure draped in heavy ceremonial robes, the Empress. She was old, her skin like parchment, her breathing labored, but her eyes were sharp, and she held her head high. She looked at the wreckage of the drones. She looked at the shield fading around Lyris. A mistake? The Empress rasped, her voice amplified by her collar. She looked at Valius with withered contempt. For 20 years. I have watched House Kor groom itself for my throne. I watched you poison the court with whispers. I watched you rot the Empire from the inside. She turned her gaze to Lyris. Lyris, who was standing amidst the smoke, glowing and fierce. I waited, the Empress said softly. I waited for a sign that something true still lived in this bloodline. She raised a trembling hand, pointing at Lyris. That is not a mistake. Lord Kor, that is a sovereign. The chamber erupted. The reformists were cheering. The guards were lowering their weapons. Valius Kor looked at the turning tide. He looked at Lyris, who was walking up the steps of the dais. I will not be judged by a corpse and a mutant, he screamed. He turned and bolted, sprinting toward the private exit that led to the upper gardens. Secure the chamber, Adrian barked to the dissident officers. He looked at Lyris. She was already moving. Go, Adrian said. Finish it. The chase led them into the rotating garden domes, a sphere of artificial biomes at the very top of the spire. It was a jungle of imported ferns and waterfalls, suspended in zero gravity. Lyris moved through the floating foliage, pushing off tree trunks and stone pathways. She did not need a weapon. The station itself was speaking to her now, guiding her. She found Valius near the airlock. He was frantically trying to override the launch protocols for an escape pod. He spun around as she landed on the platform, leveling a disruptor pistol at her. "Stay back," he shouted. "I will blow the hull. I will kill us both." Lyris stood her ground. "You have nowhere to go. Valius, the docking bays are locked. Your fleet is standing down." "I am a High Lord," he screamed. "I do not surrender to the likes of you. You are unwanted. You are nothing." Lyris looked at him. She saw the fear in his eyes, the terrified, small man behind the title. She realized that he was the one who was trapped. He was a prisoner of his own need for dominance. "I was unwanted," Lyris admitted. She took a step forward. Her glow had softened to a gentle, steady light. "I was cast aside, and that is why I understand what this empire needs. It does not need another conqueror, Valius. It needs someone who knows what it feels like to be small." Valius's hand wavered. "Shoot me, and you die," Lyris said calmly. "Surrender, and you live. I cannot," he stammered. "The shame." "There is no shame in losing," Lyris said, "only in refusing to learn." She held out her hand, not a fist, an open palm. "I offer you exile. Valius, go to the frontier, see the worlds you tried to burn. Learn what it means to survive without a title." Valius stared at her hand. For a second, it seemed he might take it. The tension stretched, thin and taut. Then his eyes hardened. "I would rather burn," he whispered. He raised the pistol, aiming not at Lyris, but at the glass wall of the dome behind her. If he shattered it, the decompression would kill them instantly. "No!" Lyris shouted. She lunged, but she was too far away. A blur of motion tackled Valius from the side. Adrian. He had followed them. He slammed into Valius, knocking the aim wide. The disruptor fired, scorching the ceiling but missing the glass. They grappled in the zero-G, spinning through the air. Valius was desperate, fighting with frantic strength. He pulled a hidden knife from his boot. Adrian blocked the strike, but Valius twisted, driving the blade down. There was a sickening sound of tearing fabric and flesh. Adrian grunted, his body seizing. Lyris screamed. She unleashed a pulse of kinetic energy, precise and sharp. It struck Valius in the chest, throwing him backward across the dome. He hit the far wall and crumpled, unconscious. Lyris scrambled through the air to Adrian. He was floating near a cluster of vines, clutching his side. Blood was bright red against his dress uniform, floating in spherical droplets in the microgravity. "Adrian!" She grabbed him, anchoring them to a handrail. Her hands hovered over the wound. "I'm okay," he wheezed, his face pale. "I'm okay. Just a scratch. It is deep," Lyris said, her voice trembling. She ripped a strip of cloth from her tunic and pressed it against the wound. "Why did you intervene?" "I had it. You were negotiating." Adrian smiled weakly, wincing. "I was securing the asset." "You idiot," Lyris sobbed, pressing harder. "You brave, stupid idiot." Adrian reached up, his bloody hand touching her cheek. "Strength is service." "Lyris," he whispered, "you taught me that." "Medical teams," Lyris shouted into her comms, her voice cracking. "I need a trauma team in the garden dome, now." She looked back at Adrian. Her biolight flared, wrapping around him, keeping him warm. "Do not you dare leave me, Adrian Vale," she commanded. We have a galaxy to fix. Adrian looked at her, his eyes drifting shut. Yes, Your Majesty. He breathed. The medical bay was quiet. The hum of the regenerators was the only sound. Lyris sat in the chair beside the bed. She had not changed her clothes. She still wore the dusty miner's jacket over her flight suit. Adrian was sleeping. The bio readout above his head showed steady vitals. The knife had missed the major arteries, but the damage had been severe. He would need a week in the tank, but he would live. Lyris let out a breath she felt she had been holding since she left Kestrel 9. She leaned forward, resting her forehead on the edge of the mattress. A hand touched her hair. She looked up. Adrian was watching her, his eyes hazy but open. "You look terrible," he whispered. "You look worse," she countered, a watery smile breaking on her face. "Is it over?" he asked. Lyris nodded. "Valius is in custody. The Empress has dissolved the High Council and called for a constitutional assembly. The coup is dead. And you?" Adrian asked. Lyris looked at her hands. They were not glowing now. They were just hands. "The Empress wants to abdicate," Lyris said softly. "She wants to name me successor. She says the Aegis chose me." Adrian watched her. "Do you want it?" "I want to run away," Lyris admitted. "I want to get back on the Stardust Runner and find a planet where no one knows my name. I want to be with you, Adrian, somewhere quiet." Adrian moved his hand to cover hers. "You can do that," he said. "You have earned it." Lyris shook her head slowly. "But then I think about Ilara." She said, "I think about the refugees in the Vale. If I leave, the sharks will come back. Maybe not Core, but someone else. The system is broken. Adrian, if I don't stay to fix it, then the silence wins." She squeezed his hand. "I have to stay. I have to lead." Adrian smiled. It was a sad smile, but it was filled with such immense pride that it made Lyris's chest ache. "I know," he said. "What about us?" Lyris asked, her voice small. "A queen cannot marry a rogue human envoy. The protocol—" "To hell with the protocol," Adrian said. He squeezed her hand back, his grip weak but firm. "Lyris, look at me. I did not fight an empire to let a rulebook tell me who I can love. If you are the queen, you write the rules." Lyris looked at him. She saw the bandages, the scars, the exhaustion, and she saw the man who had sat beside her when everyone else walked away. She leaned down, brushing her lips against his. It was a gentle kiss, salty with tears, but it held the weight of a vow. "You are right," she whispered against his mouth. "I am the queen." She pulled back, her eyes clearing. "And I am appointing you First Lord of the Admiralty?" "No, that is too militaristic. Minister of Common Sense?" Adrian laughed, then winced. "How about just partner?" he suggested. Lyris kissed his forehead. "Partner," she agreed. The door to the medical bay slid open. A protocol droid hovered in. "Your Highness," the droid said. "The delegates are assembled in the Great Hall. The galaxy is waiting for your statement." Lyris stood up. She smoothed the rough fabric of her miner's jacket. She did not ask for a robe. She did not ask for a crown. She looked at Adrian one last time. "Wait for me?" she asked. "Always," he said. Lyris Vale turned and walked toward the door. She was tired. She was afraid. But as she stepped into the corridor, her head held high. The walls of the station seemed to hum in recognition. She was no longer the unwanted girl in the corner. She was the architect of the future, and she was ready to build. The silence that fell over Aurelia Spire in the weeks following the failed coup was not the suffocating silence of the old court, where words were withheld like breath. It was a breathless, suspended silence, the kind that exists in the split second after a dam breaks, before the river finds its new course. Lyris Vile stood on the observation deck of the Imperial Suite, looking out at the skeletal repair crews drifting like fireflies around the station's bruised hull. The reflection in the transparasteel showed a woman who looked familiar but changed. The silk of her gown was no longer a cage. It was a choice. The silver veins of her bio-variant, once hidden under layers of powder and shame, pulsed with a soft, steady rhythm, visible for the galaxy to see. She held a datapad in her hand. It contained 2 files. One was a flight plan for the Stardust Runner, heading for an uncharted sector where the charts ended and the quiet began. The other was a draft of a new constitution for the Empire. The door chimed. "Enter," Lyris said. Adrian Vale walked in. He was moving stiffly, favoring his left side where the knife had gone in, but he was walking under his own power. He wore civilian clothes, a simple tunic and trousers in slate gray, having discarded the stiff uniform of the diplomatic corps. "You are staring at the stars again," Adrian said, coming to stand beside her. "Thinking about running?" Lyris did not look away from the void. "Every day. The runner is fueled. We could leave within the hour. No more politics, no more assassins, just us and the drift." "It sounds perfect," Adrian said softly. "It does." Lyris agreed. She turned to face him. But then I remember the look on Valius Cor's face when he realized he could not buy his way out of judgment. And I remember the refugees on Kestrel 9 who asked if the light was coming back. She handed him the datapad. "I am deleting the flight plan," she said. Adrian took the pad, his fingers brushing hers. He did not look surprised. "I knew you would," he said. "You are not the kind of person who leaves the job half-finished." "I am terrified, Adrian," she admitted, her voice dropping to a whisper. "They want me to be the Empress. They want to put a crown on my head and pretend the last 100 years of rot never happened. But I cannot be what they were." "Then be what they need," Adrian said. "Don't rule them. Lyris, lead them." The great hall of the conclave was packed to capacity 3 days later. It was a sea of velvet and metals, nervous dignitaries and war-weary generals. But this time, the gallery was not just for the highborn. At Lyris's insistence, the upper tiers were filled with lottery winners from the lower decks, union representatives from the docks, and mining guild leaders from the fringe worlds. Lyris stood at the podium. She did not sit on the diamond throne. She stood before it, using it as a backdrop rather than a seat of power. "Citizens of the Reach," she began, her voice amplified by the station's acoustics. "For 1,000 years, we have been told that blood determines worth. We have been told that some are born to rule and others are born to serve. We have been told that genetic variance is a defect, and that purity is the only virtue." She paused, looking out at the faces of the traditionalists who still scowled in the front rows. "We were lied to." A murmur ran through the hall. "The blood in my veins was called a curse," she continued, raising her hand to show the glowing traceries. "But it was this curse that powered the Aegis. It was this curse that saved Odera. If we continue to judge value by the shape of a helix or the name of a house, we will crumble. The universe is too vast and too dangerous for us to be fighting ourselves." She pressed a button on the console. A holographic document materialized above her, rotating slowly. "This is the Charter of Sentience," she announced. "It proposes a constitutional shift. From this day forward, the throne is not an absolute authority. It is an executive office, checked by a parliament of elected representatives from every inhabited system." Pandemonium erupted in the front rows. A duke from the inner core stood up, shaking his fist. "This is anarchy," he shouted. "You are dissolving the divine right of kings. I am dissolving the divine right of tyrants." Lyris shot back, her voice cutting through the noise. "And I am proposing an end to bloodline supremacy. No office, not even this one, shall be inherited by blood alone. Competence will be the currency of this new era." She leaned forward, gripping the podium. "You called me a monster because I was different. Very well. Then let the monster teach you how to be human." The applause started from the upper tiers, a rain of sound that grew heavier and louder until it drowned out the protests of the old guard. It was a chaotic, messy, beautiful sound. It was the sound of a system breaking and something stronger being built in its place. While Lyris fought the war of ideas in the Great Hall, Adrian fought a colder, quieter war in the secure comm center of the human embassy. The screen before him displayed the members of the Terran Security Council. They sat in their high-backed chairs in Geneva, looking like a tribunal of disappointed parents. "You are compromised. Envoy Vale," the council chair said, adjusting his glasses. "You violated direct orders to disengage. You aided a foreign national in seizing power. You have effectively gone native. The media on Earth is calling you a romantic hero. But in this room, we call you a liability." Adrian sat back in his chair, crossing his arms. He looked at the faces of the men and women who had sent him to Aurelia Spire to negotiate a surrender disguised as a treaty. "With all due respect, counselors," Adrian said, his voice level, "I did not go native, I went human. That is a semantic distinction," the chair snapped. "You have entangled Earth in an alien civil war." "I prevented an alien civil war," Adrian corrected. "And in doing so, I secured the Aegis Pact." He tapped a file on his desk, transmitting it to Earth. "Lyris Vile, Her Majesty, the Imperatrix, has agreed to a mutual defense treaty. Not a non-aggression pact, a full alliance. If Earth is threatened, the Aegis grid will protect us. If the Empire is threatened, our fleets will assist them. I secured the most powerful defensive asset in the galaxy for the cost of a few broken protocols and a knife in the ribs." The counselors read the document. The silence stretched. "You are sleeping with the head of state," one of the generals grunted. "That is a conflict of interest." "It is a diplomatic bridge," Adrian said, a faint smile touching his lips. "And frankly, General, unless you have someone else who can talk a super-powered alien queen out of vaporizing a blockade fleet, I suggest you let me keep my job." The chair sighed, rubbing his temples. "The optics are complicated, but the treaty is ironclad." "Very well. Vale, you are reinstated, but you are on probation. One wrong move, one scandal, and we pull you home." "I understand," Adrian said. He cut the feed. He slumped back in the chair, exhaling slowly. He was not compromised. He was committed. And for the first time in his career, he knew exactly who he was working for. The galaxy did not change overnight, but the lens through which it viewed itself began to shift. The media, hungry for a new narrative after the horror of the coup, latched onto the story of Lyris and Adrian. They painted it not as a scandal, but as a symbol, the human and the vile, the soldier and the queen. It became a metaphor for interspecies dignity. But Lyris refused to let the story stay in the abstract. She began a tour of the systems most affected by the core regime's brutality. She did not go to the governor's palaces. She went to the crash sites. On the moon of Odera, the scorched earth from the bombardment attempt was still warm. A memorial had been hastily erected, a simple cairn of stones. Lyris walked among the survivors. She wore a simple mourning cloak. She did not offer platitudes. She listened. She stood for hours as a woman wept into her shoulder about a son lost in the initial panic. She held the hands of miners whose lungs were scarred by the chemical runoff of Core's illegal weapon factories. I cannot bring them back. Lyris told a crowd gathered in the ruins of a marketplace. But I can promise you that their deaths were the last payment made to the old world. She announced a reparations initiative, funded by the liquidation of House Core's assets. Every credit seized from the conspirators was funneled into rebuilding the border worlds. It was a massive redistribution of wealth that horrified the core systems and electrified the frontier. During a broadcast from the medical research facility on Aurelius Spire, Lyris took the final step in redefining herself. She sat on an examination table, rolling up her sleeve to reveal the silver, glowing veins of her arm. The camera zoomed in. For decades, this image had been used in horror vids to scare children. "This is a bio-variant," Lyris said to the camera. "For a long time, you were taught to fear it. You were taught it was a sickness." She looked directly into the lens. "But this is not a sickness. It is a legacy. My ancestors modified themselves not to be better than you, but to protect you. This light is a service, and I am not the only one." She brought forward other variants, people from minor houses and slum districts who had been hiding their own genetic deviations. Some had extraocular vision, others had heightened density. "We are not defects," Lyris said. "We are the diversity that will save us." It was a cultural earthquake. Within weeks, young people on the station were using bioluminescent body paint to mimic her markings. The stigma was not just erased, it was inverted. To be different was no longer to be unwanted, it was to be modern. In the midst of the heavy political lifting, there was Sparky. The AI had been transferred from the portable unit back into the station's mainframe, but he retained a dedicated mobile drone that followed Lyris everywhere, usually hovering at shoulder height. During a tense budget meeting regarding the allocation of terraforming equipment, the drone cleared its throat with a digitized ahem. "Excuse me, Your Majesty," Sparky interrupted. "Not now." "Sparky," Lyris whispered, reviewing a ledger. "I feel that my contributions to the revolution have gone unacknowledged." The AI persisted. "I hacked a Class 9 firewall. I played the tuba version of the Imperial March while the bad guys were crying. I feel I deserve a title." Lyris looked up, rubbing her eyes. The ministers looked confused. "A title?" Lyris asked. "Yes," Sparky said. "Envoy Vale is the first partner. You are the Imperatrix. I am just the drone. It is demoralizing. I want to be the Grand Archduke of Dada." Lyris fought a smile. "That seems excessive." "How about the High Keeper of the Imperial Wit?" Adrian suggested from the other end of the table. Sparky bobbed thoughtfully. "High Keeper. It has a certain gravitas. Does it come with a hat?" "We can paint a hat on your chassis," Lyris offered. "Acceptable." Sparky beeped. "Proceed with the meeting. I shall be in the cloud, judging your math." The tension in the room broke. The ministers laughed. It was a small moment, but it signaled a change in the atmosphere of the court. Humor, once banned as a sign of disrespect, was now allowed to breathe. That evening, the public persona was hung up like a heavy coat, and only the woman remained. Lyris and Adrian sat in her private quarters. They had bypassed the grand dining hall for a low table near the window, sharing a bottle of wine and a plate of real food, not nutrient paste. Adrian watched the light from the nebula play across Lyris's face. She looked tired, but it was a good tired, the exhaustion of purpose. "You were incredible today," Adrian said. "The The biovariant broadcast. The numbers are already shifting when you are changing the definition of normal. Lyris took a sip of wine. I am just trying to make it safe for the next girl who wakes up glowing, she said.
Okay.
She set the glass down and looked at him. We need to talk about us.
She's making that money.
Adrian. Adrian stilled. I thought we decided. To hell with the protocol. We did, Lyris said. But we need to be honest about what that looks like. I am the Empress. My life is going to be schedules, and threats, and endless debates about grain tariffs. I cannot give you a normal life. Adrian, I cannot give you a quiet house on a hill. I never wanted a quiet house, Adrian said. And I cannot be owned, Lyris added, her voice fierce. I spent my life being someone's property, my father's, the state's. I love you, Adrian. But I will not be your wife in the way the galaxy expects. I will not be a possession. Adrian reached across the table, taking her hand. Lyris, he said, his voice low and steady. I do not want to own you. I want to witness you. He traced the silver lines on her knuckles. We are partners, he said. You have your duty and I have mine. There will be days when the crown comes first. I accept that. I am not here to hide you away or keep you to myself. I am here to make sure that when you put the weight of the world down, you have somewhere soft to land.
What are you doing over there?
Lyris felt the tears prick her eyes. It was the negotiation she had feared, and it was the easiest victory of her life. Desire without ownership, she whispered. Devotion without chains. Adrian replied. He stood up and pulled her to her feet.
Who's shooting at me?
The kiss was not a desperate collision like the one in the courier ship. It was slow. It was deep. It was a conversation without words, a reaffirmation of the bond that had been forged in adrenaline and sealed in blood. It was emotionally explicit, a bearing of souls rather than just bodies. In his arms, Lyris felt the final wall crumble. She did not have to choose between being powerful and being loved. She could be both. 6 months after the coup, Lyris convened the first galactic summit of the new era. The venue was the same grand atrium where she had sat alone, but everything else had changed. The long hierarchical tables were gone. In their place were round tables, interlocking like the gears of a great machine. The guest list was unrecognizable. The high lords of the surviving houses were there. Yes, but they sat alongside resistance fighters from Kestrel 9. The trade minister sat next to a refugee mother from the Vale. The hierarchy of silence had been replaced by a cacophony of voices. Lyris entered the room. She wore a gown of deep midnight blue, woven with conductive threads that amplified her natural glow. She did not walk alone. Sparky buzzed happily over her left shoulder, sporting a freshly painted gold top hat on his casing. She moved through the room, not as a distant figurehead, but as a host. She shook hands with the miners. She bowed to the elders of the alien tribes. She ensured that the outcasts were placed at the center of the room, under the brightest lights, while the old nobility sat at the edges, forced to look inward at the people they had ignored. She reached the central table. It was the heart of the summit. She took her seat, and then she waited. The doors opened. Adrian Vale entered. He wore the dress uniform of the Terran Coalition, but he had added a sash of vile silk across his chest, a visual blending of their worlds. The room went quiet, but it was a warm silence, filled with anticipation. Adrian walked through the crowd. He nodded to the admirals. He smiled at the former smugglers. He moved with the same predatory grace he had shown that first night. But the edge was gone, replaced by a confident peace. He reached the central table. He looked at the empty chair beside Lyris. The last time he had stood here, It had been a provocation, an act of rebellion against a rigid system, a challenge to the galaxy to look at the woman everyone tried to erase. Now, the galaxy was looking. Adrian did not hesitate. He did not ask for permission. He pulled out the chair. He sat beside her. He turned his chair slightly, creating that same private sphere in the middle of the public crowd, just as he had done before. But this time, he did not look at her with curiosity. He looked at her with a profound public reverence. "Hi, lady," he said, his voice carrying clearly. "The view is much better from this side of history." Laris smiled, and it was a smile that lit up the entire station. "It is," she agreed. She reached out and took his hand, intertwining her glowing fingers with his. As the summit began, as the voices of 1,000 worlds rose in debate and laughter and hope, Lyris Vale looked out at the room. She saw the faces of the people she had saved, and the people who had saved her. She thought of the girl she had been, the one who stood by the wall, holding a glass of nectar she didn't want to drink, convinced she was a mistake in the genetic code of the universe. She realized now that the feeling of being unwanted had never been the truth. It had been a lie told by a broken system to keep her from realizing her own power. She had not been waiting to be chosen. She had been waiting to wake up. She squeezed Adrian's hand, felt the solid, warm pressure of his return grip, and turned her face toward the light of the future she was building. She was the queen, and she was exactly where she belonged.